universe can, given the laws of nature, spontaneously come into existence. Okay? Then it will come into existence. It will come into existence at some time. And the fact that it came into existence at that time need not have any reason. It need not have any reason why it was that time rather than some other time. But whatever time it happens, it will come into existence. And people can say, there's some significance to that. But it must happen somewhere at some time, and there need not be any significance, any purpose, any intelligence for why it happened now instead of then. It's guaranteed to happen at some point. Now if you say, during that creation, there are laws, one of which is the laws of quantum mechanics, which can create a universe with zero total energy. By the way, and by creating a universe, I mean a universe that didn't exist. There was no space, there were no times, and no laws, in fact. And then you come in and you say, okay, if that universe is created spontaneously, it must be created at some time. So a universe must come into existence. In fact, an infinite number of universes can come into existence if time is infinite. Okay? It's certainly possible. Then a universe will come into existence, and you can say, let me predict the properties of that universe. Well, lo and behold, the properties of that universe happen to be exactly the properties of the universe we live in, including the structure of the fluctuations of the cosmic microwave background that collapse to produce all the galaxies and all the stars and the planets and you and me. That's explanatory. There's no explanation at that level in any way in your book. So the explanation of a universe that could come into existence from nothing without any purpose, without any planning, without any reason, is explanatory. Now, lest I be misconstrued, that is just plausible. Because we do not have a full scientific theory. But to make the claim, as I know you've often made, that because that there are certain things we will never understand, is to misunderstand science. There are lots of things we don't understand today, and that's the reason to go out and do science. It's just like Darwin said, he said, in the evolution of species, I'm describing the evolution of species. I'm not describing the origin of life. We'll never understand the origin of life. We'll no sooner understand the origin of life than we understand the origin of matter. Well, of course, he didn't realize that we'd one day understand the origin of matter. Just as I expect in your lifetime and my lifetime, we'll understand the origin of life. We'll understand how chemistry turns into biology. By doing experiments, testing, and not forcing our predilection that it's impossible. I had a debate recently where somebody said, it's impossible for non-life to turn into life. Well, that's a nice statement. It's a nice belief. And it's a belief you can have, but it's a belief that can be wrong. And that's the great thing about science, which you can call atheism if you wish. It's you're willing to change your beliefs. You're not assuming the answers before you ask the question. You're not assuming you know what's divinely right just because you interpret a certain book to mean a certain thing, and someone else may interpret it to mean something else. You will agree there are different interpretations of every book, including the Bible and the Quran. And so to presume that you know divine truth before you've asked the universe is not sensible. And I don't think I'll take any more time. Okay.
Thank you, Professor Krauss. Now back over to Hamza. 3 minutes it will be, thereabouts.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you very much for your presentation. Now, I really want you to try and address some of my arguments. You produced something about with the Quran, but if you were attentive to my argument, the Quran says bring a chapter like it, not two verses from different chapters. So, again, it was a straw man of the articulation of what the Quranic miracle was. And I could spend more time maybe during the Q&A to explain what that is, but I specifically said bring one chapter like it. Your computer model, which I like to see evidence of, by the way.
But who just decides what's like it? I mean, do you decide or do I?
Okay, is that a different question?
To me, Shakespeare is more beautiful than the Quran.
That's fine.
Okay.
But,
or James Joyce. Yes. He doesn't use iambic pentameter.
I understand, sir.
Okay.
But what you have to understand, sir, is this, is that I repeated maybe more than once, it's not based on aesthetic reception and your opinions on beauty.
Who determined it?
Well, it's the reality, empirical reality.
No,
I'm going to explain.
Reality?
Let me explain what the argument is again, because from your onset you've misunderstood it. You thought it was
quoted
beauty.
People who said it couldn't have been created. But those are just literary scholars. What if I say, yeah, it could be created?
Yeah, let me just explain that, because your first presupposition was based on a falsehood, wasn't it? Yeah, you thought it was aesthetic reception. It's based upon the structural features of the Arabic language. And because I only have 2 minutes, I'll continue that in the Q&A, okay? So, also you're saying about that, look, if the universe began, and we could show that maybe empirically or deductively. My focus is on the deduction here. And I don't think you really address from the infinite perspective when we said that this is based on axioms and conventions in the mathematical realm of discourse, but in discrete physical parts, as you've admitted in your book, that can't happen. So we have a deductive argument that the universe began, which means it once wasn't there. Ontologically, if there wasn't a cause for that, you wouldn't have the universe in the first place. The second point I like to make...
No, there's you see the photon that's lighting you up from that thing?
Yes.
It didn't exist before it was emitted by the electron.
Yes.
Okay? It didn't exist.
Yes.
It wasn't there.
And you're saying there's no cause?
It wasn't, point is, yeah, I'm saying this. What I'm saying is, there can be physical causes for physical effects.
Yes.
Okay, but they don't have to be, but God doesn't have to pull the photon up. Just because the photon appears from nothing doesn't require something supernatural.
I agree. But
okay, so if a universe suddenly comes into
second.
existence where it wasn't before, it doesn't require something supernatural.
But I already gave you a defeater to the argument that you assume that when things begin to exist, they may not require any causes. And that defeater was...
Not any purpose. I didn't say cause. I just said if a universe can come into existence by physical causes,
yes,
where there's no universe to begin with, it will happen at some time. And your point was
I
it happened, and therefore there's a reason why it happened, because it happened when it happened. Well, if it didn't happen then, it would have happened some other time, and we would have had this conversation.
Let's calm down. You're putting words in my mouth, okay?
Okay.
What I'm saying to you, I'm not saying things like, I'm not talking about teleology. I'm not talking about there is a purpose behind.
Don't use definition. Did you not say our universe came into existence for a cause and there had to be a reason for it?
No, I didn't say reason.
There had to be a purpose?
No, I didn't say that. I said there is a cause.
I thought you said there was an intelligence. You gave a whole long argument.
Oh, that's after using conceptual analysis that you agree that there is a uncreated creator or a cause that was uncaused. Now...
Well, hold on, but forget all that. I just talked about our universe.
Yes.
Are you agreeing with me that our universe doesn't have to have any purpose or reason to create it?
No, of course I'm not. I don't agree with you.
Well,
but that's not my argument. My argument is, deductively, was the universe once absent?
Yes.
Yes. If that's the case, then ontologically, which means the nature and source of reality is that it couldn't have come into being without a cause.
Well, okay. First of all, I hope it's that way because that'd be easier to understand.
Yes.
Okay? It's possible that it's not that way. Okay? So if it has, and you could take this out of my time if you want, I don't give a damn. The point is that maybe time exists outside of our universe, maybe it doesn't. Let's just pretend it does, and then our universe came into existence, and there was a physical cause for that. That's fine, I'm fine with that. I'm fine with our universe coming into existence for physical cause, just like that photon being created. But as I pointed out to you, it's equally possible that these notions that we have in our brains, because we're humans living at a classical level, that time exists and is a continuous flow, may break down. And if they break down at t = 0, then any sense of the word cause becomes nonsensical. The word cause is a red herring in your terms. It's not worth discussing. It may not be relevant to the creation of our universe because there may not have been any time before it, and therefore this notion that every cause, every effect has a cause may be irrelevant if there's no time. Now, I don't know if that's the case, but I'm willing to ask the question, and I'm willing to do studies to see if it's reasonable.
Yes.
I'm not willing to presume the answer before I ask the question.
Well, of course, I agree. Okay. But the point is, the presumption here is that you require time, and that there's a specific physical definition for time. Now,
the presumption is after t = 0, you require time. That's absolutely true. The presumption that you require time at t = 0, if you took the equations as they're written, time would go out the window.
I don't have a contention with the physics. That's your job.
No, but there's no. Yeah. But if you take it as they're written, there's no time. The time has no meaning at t = 0.
Okay, agreed.
Great.
According to the physics, I don't disagree with you. I highly respect that. But all of that is inductive in nature.
No, it's not.
Of course. What is it based on? Is it deductive?
It's based on observation.
Which is inductive.
Well, no, it's empirical. It's empirical. The problem is, it's empirical.
Okay, well, what's empirical?
Okay. Look, I don't care. Look,
do you have an infinite set of observations? Mm-hmm. Have you had an infinite set of observations?
Now, if you're going to tell me I read something you wrote which really misrepresented science, you're absolutely right. If you're going to tell me science can never tell anything with absolute certainty.
Yes.
Okay. things that are wrong.
Yes.
That's what science can tell.
I agree.
Science can tell us the Earth isn't 6,000 years old.
Good.
Science can tell us that science can tell us many things, and so
I don't disagree with you.
Okay.
I don't disagree with you.
Okay, so the fact that science can lead us closer to what is the underlying reality is absolutely true, and the fact that science can't say with anything with absolute certainty is absolutely true, except what's wrong.
Yes, I agree.
Okay. And it can say certain claims, for example, that the moon split in two when he was there is wrong. Now, I know you're going to say
another red herring. Another red herring.
I know another red herring, but certainly...
Loads of fish in this room today.
No. Some people, as you know, some interpreters of that thought that was the case, but they're wrong. You agree with me?
That's it.
Do you agree that...
I'm making a different point here, Professor.
Okay, all I'm saying is this is a book of words, and you can interpret it many different ways, and some interpretation of those
I'm going to address
are
that.
wrong.
I'm going to address that as well. But that's, look, we're going from so many different issues. It's a typical strategy of not knowing how to respond to a particular point. Look, the point of interpretation, for example, the Quran, for example, if we read the whole of the Quran holistically, we understand that it's probably the only religious book that gives you tools of interpretation. For example, the Quran says there are some open-ended verses, ambiguous verses, and they're specified. So in linguistics, it's called intra and intertextuality. Now, therefore, it creates a scope of interpretation. Yes, I agree there's interpretation, but there are some things that lie outside of the scope because you don't know the language, you don't know the interpretive tools, you don't follow the scholarly tradition, etc. So there is, yes, I agree, a scope of interpretation, but it's fixed. So that, in essence, is the red herring. The point I want to get to
what's
here...
different about that than, say, Christian theological's different interpretation of the Bible?
Well, that's very interesting. Well, for example, in the Protestant tradition, the reason they moved away from the Catholic Church is because they said, look, this is me and my book, and I could interpret the way I want. But now a lot of Protestants are coming back to the Catholic tradition because they're saying, how do I understand God's word? And that's why they see the church entity as an interpretive authority, do you see? So obviously they have their own confusions, but the book doesn't tell it how to interpret it. That's why you have the German school of systematic theology.
The Catholic Church, which now accepts evolution, for example, would say, you're right, the book doesn't tell us how to interpret this ridiculous first...
But I just want to get back to my original point, which is... So
there's nothing unique about it. You keep pretending Islam is unique, and I don't see it.
Can we deal with a point at a time?
Okay. Yeah,
okay,
but you throw these things out.
We believe Islam is not unique.
If I don't
Professor,
challenge them,
Professor,
then
we don't believe Islam is unique. We believe it's a universal message. I believe it's the one true God. Don't enslave yourself to your ego and your desires and the beast aspects of man or to the social pressure, loyal because I'm worth it.
So
but free yourself from these shackles and worship the divine, which gives you true freedom. Because if you want real liberty, interesting, the word ruh in the Arabic language means soul or self. And it comes from the triliteral stem.
Self, which one?
Both, in different contexts, okay? We just be nuanced, okay? Not reductionist. So,
what's a soul? You want to tell me what a soul is?
Well, when you die, you'll find out. Let me just get my point.